So thank you for joining me on today's webinar, and our topic is e-commerce usability. This webinar comes from actual research that we've performed at Experience Dynamics, and we've been working in the field of user experience and conversion optimization e-commerce usability for 15 years. And this set of 18 musts is kind of a synthesis of current best practices in the industry, as well as some actual insights from our user studies and our e-commerce redesigns and usability tests of e-commerce websites. So I'm Frank Spillers, and I'm the lead UX designer, chief experience officer, senior usability practitioner, and I've been working in the field for close to 18 years now, and have come through the .com phase and all the way through to mobile optimization, and now into e-commerce as it exists today in 2015. On the agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about what the picture of e-commerce looks like today, and then also some of those trends that we're seeing that will most likely influence e-commerce tomorrow. This information that I'm going to share with you is grounded, as I said in the introduction, to the actual practice of our work at Experience Dynamics. And so it's not really theoretical, it's not really recycled from some report, or it's not really some projection or forecast from some analyst group or some agency or some organization that puts out a tool that's selling an e-commerce best practice. There's not really any of that stuff. It's really just kind of from the street, if you will, from the horse's mouth, from users themselves, from profiling and understanding users, and from successfully deploying, helping teams put out new versions of e-commerce pages. And just to say that this information can actually be applied across the board. We're going to share some trends we think you should test. We're going to talk a little bit about shopping cart abandonment and conversion optimization with regard to e-commerce. Can be applied across the board, but many of the examples that you'll see here today are retail e-commerce. And so just bear that in mind, that you'll see retail examples, but many of the best practices and many of the tips that you'll get in this seminar are actually relevant across industries and across even business-to-business e-commerce situations as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to share with you some recent research that just came out, and this is kind of hot off the press, and the key takeaway here is about content engagement, that how users are engaging with content is really, really important. Now, when it comes to conversions, e-commerce conversions, when it comes to e-commerce usability, it's all about decision making, and that's also why it applies across industries, not necessarily retail, though we're going to give it a retail kind of focus here. Most of the engagement is occurring on desktop, though 33% is on mobile. So mobile is catching up, and there are reasons why it's a little bit slow. This doesn't mean that mobile is not important, as we'll see in a moment. If we look at the data from this study at Bright Edge put together, and this was an analysis of 82 million pieces of information gathered from consumer interest metrics like time spent on page. That's one of the big metrics, has been since about 2007 on the web. And the other one was from conversion rate analysis, and the third one was from social metrics, how much engagement is occurring. It's kind of interesting to note the desktop versus mobile, and you'll see desktop dominates across the board, and retail is interestingly much lower than, say, compared to even B2B engagement on desktop or hospitality, which is things like hotels and travel. So this is a very interesting piece of information just because of the sample size, or the amount of information that was analyzed, and the kind of the different sources that were pulled. But it's telling us something about engagement. One thing for sure is that mobile optimization is crucial. That 68% of traffic is lost because of the poor engagement occurring, basically lack of responsive design on the website. And this is why 1 in 4 mobile sites are causing users to just leave, and causing users to abandon their search. In another study, they found that mobile and tablet together are like a good chunk of traffic, and this is getting stronger and stronger, that their revenue, so the revenue rate is at 26%. So again, this is because of the lack of responsiveness. We found in our studies that a lot of, in retail e-commerce situations, a lot of users want to purchase on the phone, but they just find it clunky. Many of the users tell us that they move to the desktop because it's bigger, they can see better, the phone is not as optimized, so it's not a pleasant experience. There are things, you have sort of the whole process of like logging in and entering, filling out forms, and navigating and browsing is fairly easy on most sites, but when it comes to the kind of work part of it, it's easier to just do it on the desktop. There are some consumers we found in our studies that find that, or they think that a mobile phone is less secure than a desktop. So there are some of these kind of early day perceptions still floating around. One of the things we're seeing is that there's a stronger uptake of mobile engagement with younger consumers, and this is in studies we've done, for example, with banking, registering for a bank account on a mobile phone versus on desktop, and so forth. But it's important to note that mobile is the starting point. So on the conversion rates, it's like 75% desktop, 10% on mobile in terms of conversion rate. So again, this is 3 different pieces of data all pointing to the similar conclusion. The real key, though, is that this doesn't mean, we don't have to worry about mobile, we'll just keep optimizing and focus on desktop. That would be a very naive conclusion. That if you look at the current rate of starting point for mobile is something like 86%. 86% of all e-commerce queries start on mobile devices, and then they end up over on the web. So this is a conversion rate. In other words, they put their credit card in on the desktop. But even inside of one household, you'll have the bouncing around from the mobile to tablet to desktop and so forth, all sort of walking around. There's a really great quote here. I want you to just take this in mind as we go along the journey of this webinar, and we're going to look at the 18 musts that I know some of you are on the edge of your chair to, what are these 18 musts, right? This is a great quote from HBR, and he's saying here that personalization and this feeling that customers are connecting, that when we talk about content engagement, he's basically saying the same thing here, that where the customers are in their journey gets you noticed and persuades people to take action. So the more relevant that content, the more effective it will be. We're actually going to show you some examples today of content and of how important content is in the conversion process across the e-commerce usability experience. So hold that thought from HBR, because it's a very important point. So what does e-commerce look like tomorrow? Well, you know, outside of making big, grandiose predictions, I think it's instructive to look at what's happening now and what trends are that have enough kind of momentum behind them where we see them as continuing into tomorrow, you know, and by tomorrow we're defining, I guess, the next few years, you know, because things change and technologies change. We know user behavior doesn't change as much, but at least we know that this is what the picture looks like today. So we see more and more responsive and mobile interactions from consumers. We see Facebook taking a larger role. Facebook has just, you know, kind of restructured their business thinking to become more of a mobile first type of organization. You'll see some stories about that, I'm sure, on the internet here, and you can Google it as well. But the driving point behind that is that Facebook has boosted their sales, their revenues used to be like 25% on mobile, now they're 75%, and that's in a year or two. So most of Facebook's revenue is coming from their mobile engagement. So that's really important. What that means for e-commerce is the advertising kind of remarketing, that people are going from your site over to Facebook, and then they may see the offer on Facebook and so forth and so on. So it means that Facebook plays a much stronger role. Not so much Twitter, not so much other social sites and apps, though those are important for engagement, you know, because you're always promoting brand, you know, whether you're playing in Instagram or Pinterest or whatever. Content plus e-commerce, so we see a much stronger play of content combining and merging with e-commerce. We'll see some examples of that in a little bit. Video starts to play a much larger role, and the forecast for video, I think Cisco is forecasting something like by 2018 that we will have 76% of all traffic on the internet will be video based or something. You know, there's a prediction like that, and so video starts to play a much stronger role in e-commerce, definitely a stronger role in e-commerce. Omni-channel, so the so-called, you know, like any channel, anytime, this kind of always on, this fluidity or this less defined boundaries as maybe 10 years ago between channels. And the phenomenon here that's occurring today, that's a very strong phenomenon, is what's called digital showrooming and reverse showrooming. So it's digital showrooming is using your you know, doing your research on, say, on your phone, where that 86% of all queries start, and then walking into the store and looking at it, and then checking your phone and coming back the other way. So the reverse showrooming would be checking a store and then checking your phone to see if you can get it cheaper. Digital showrooming is going into the store and then checking your phone to see if it's cheaper and then leaving the store. So retailers, the brick and mortar retailers, are it's sort of in the middle of this quagmire of how to address this phenomenon. And it's things like, you know, if you go to Best Buy, one of the big retail stores in the United States here, I'll just preface that because there are a few people listening or watching this that are from overseas. So some of the stores now, like Best Buy, have a special car parking place for people that are coming just to pick up from the store. They have special areas of the store where you go to collect the merchandise that's specifically for people that are coming from the other channel. So there's sort of an added customer experience piece that we're now seeing that, you know, you didn't see before. It's things like that, but there's less of that happening in the app innovation area, and so going forward we expect to see much more of that. You know, there's a lot of conversation about digital wallets and, you know, electronic payment methods, and of course that plays a role for sure, but there's not a lot of discussion about how to support the ecosystem of shopping. You know, shopping's not a one-time event, it's a social activity. And if you understand shopping as a social activity, how is it that you can support this social activity such as, for example, wish listing, favoriting an item. One example that I always thought was just brilliant when my daughter was much younger, I think there were these little pets, these little doll, little characters, and they, I think it was Little Pet Shop, or there's quite a few of them, and the child would log in and I guess create an account, and quite young as well. This is targeted for quite young children, and they had all their merchandise. The idea is to collect as many as you can, and they have many, enough for a parent to start feeling the pain in their pocket with buying all these things. And they had two very simple buttons on each, so it was like a list of, it wasn't e-commerce, it wasn't like merchandise, but it was basically two buttons. One button said want it, and the other button says have it. So it was sort of your way of saying, yes, I've got this one and I've got that one, but I don't have this other one and I want it. So it's building desire, it's building, essentially nagging parents to buy these things, because it's a little young for a credit card. That's sort of more teenage years, where teens will use a credit card. But things like that around social shopping and the engagement, there are some of the social shopping websites that really understand this, and some of these flash sales sites do a pretty interesting job of supporting that as well. So let's go to the 18 musts then. Let's dive into looking at some examples. This is the highlight, and then we'll look at an example of each. So representing your compelling value. What's different about what you're selling and why? The second one is mapping the purchase decision journey. So what is that whole purchase decision process? This is everything here in e-commerce really is about supporting that purchase decision journey, just as that Harvard Business Review quote had mentioned as well. Using video, using infographics, telling a brand story. The sixth one is responsive web design. Okay, some of these shouldn't be new to you, but they are musts, because there are many sites and many folks who are not utilizing these as expertly as they could be. The seventh one there is optimizing for mobile conversion and something that we call adaptive design. So that's a little different to responsive design. If you're not familiar with adaptive design, this should be of interest to you, because I think there's a huge opportunity to optimize for conversions in mobile situations using an adaptive approach. The eighth one is to handle out-of-stock message in a proactive manner. We'll look at an example of that. And making category pages interactive, so that users are not just looking at static images, but they can interact with inventory. I just saw an example of an e-commerce site recently, very popular e-commerce site, and it just had, static images. I saw another popular e-commerce site, static images. So when you show it, users always tell us, hey, you're showing me this item, and then they can't click it and they can't explore it. So that's what I mean by interactive. Using images and visuals, okay, promoting reviews and customer testimonials. The 12th one is branding user voice. So your user's voice, in a way, it's a more strategic use of the 11th one there, which is the customer testimonial. The 13th one is making categories strong and using labeling that is user-centric. The fourth one is offering easy comparison. The fifth one is fun and interactive product selection tools, shopping wizards. The 16th one is fluid checkouts. By that we mean checkouts that are seamless, that allow for easy cart transition and conversion. The 17th one is shipping. It's all about shipping in terms of upfront and then follow through status as you go down the funnel. And the last one is navigation that's accurate and sensible. So let's dive into each one of these. The first one, representing your compelling value, and you'll see here from LL Bean, they're presenting this shirt handmade by true Portuguese artisans. So this is where the content engagement and engagement from on the page level, so when you hit a product category page all the way down to the product details page, which is this one over here, and you'll see again superior brush softness. I mean, just even the copy there is so compelling. It's already providing these very sensory-based language, which is a very smart way to try and communicate to your users. You see it again here for a softer feel, and then it's crafted with the exclusive to us thick cotton flannel, expertly woven in Portugal. Again, they're continuing that compelling value there, and they go on, and it's just, it's really well done, ending it again with woven in Portugal. So Portugal is mentioned there 3 times in that little journey from the product category page to down here. In other words, it's different. It's not just a shirt made in China. This is from a snowboard giant, Burton, and you'll notice that on their starting page, their kind of category page, they start with this little infographic, which actually is one of our e-commerce musts. And they're also showing that they know their audience by park, groomers, and backcountry. So they're connecting with the lingo there. And then when you get down to the product details page, they do the same thing down here: terrain, personality, and width. And then they're ranking stiff and aggressive here in the, I don't know what that means, but I think I'm also not a snowboarder, so I think that that is probably quite meaningful to a snowboarder, and is also showing this exclusive kind of compelling value that they're offering. That it's an aggressive snowboard. It's something that is essentially cream of the crop in, here it is again, most aggressive snowboard in Burton's lineup is what they're saying here. The second must is to map the purchase decision journey. And this is journey mapping. A lot of you are following user journeys or journey mapping. This is an example of a journey map that we created for, it's actually for creating a booking for a sports facility. So it's an actual like adventure park. It's more like sort of an experience, and it's a booking engine. And as you can see here, to booking flow. But what we've done is we've mapped out the steps that as you go through. This is the various content that you would hit, and as you can see, true to like supporting the purchase decision journey, the first one is imagining scenarios. So we're like, these are the sort of like user stories here. I want to learn something new, and then these are the kind of questions that someone would ask. And so we sort of laid out, these are all the things that they would see as they go along, and then this is all before they even get to the booking. So this is really important that you map out your purchase decision journey. It's so important to step it through, and even if you're just selling, lipstick or bars of soap, or something as benign as that, there are ways that you can support the decision making that is, that is quite can be quite compelling. And how you do this is ideally and importantly is by profiling your users. We don't do e-commerce usability studies without sampling, doing ethnographic field research, day in a life kind of research with our user population, because there's no way you can anticipate the purchase decision process. There's no way you can bring in the cultural artifacts that your users would be using. There was a recent case study by a firm that was helping a coffee shop sell its coffee, and they realized that, people are the region of the world was, so they grouped the coffee on the web. They went to the shop, and the physical experience of the coffee shop was what it was, and then they're trying to sell online e-commerce these coffee beans. But it's very difficult to buy coffee beans online if you have not experienced, So they went to the store, and they said they sort of modeled how the baristas in the coffee shop were selling the coffee, how people, what would you like, and this is bold, and so forth. And they used that to group and model their the information on the website. And so, so instead of just saying this is a dark coffee or a light coffee, or this is, they are grouping it by region and then giving each region a flavor and, that sort of thing. So they're able to, from their field study with the actual shop, to gain some of that information. Video is really important. You'll see here, there's 3 videos being offered here on this MacBook. Infographics are really important. This is from icebreaker.com. This is a website that we worked on. And we actually took the requirement here, the need, from the actual field studies. You're seeing video in here as well. So this has the best of both best practices. And you'll see down here in the bottom right corner also they're capturing their brand personality with infographics as well. This is actually really important to the first best practice that we looked at, the first e-commerce must, e-commerce usability must, which was to clarify your compelling value. So their compelling value is merino wool, and it has these attributes that they want you to know. And so this is actually on a product details page. This is right below the product image and the pricing and this sort of thing. Brand story. So what does that mean? Some great examples here. On Tom's shoes on the left-hand side, this is just scrolling the page and you get a pop-up. So even if you close the pop-up, let's say you don't want to play and you just close the pop-up, you still see that they're pushing their brand story at you, and then they do the same thing over on the right, bottom right there, where this is on their homepage. Each pair of shoes goes to a child in need, and there it is again over here. To date, your purchases have, and then these 2 are products. So that sort of balance and that sort of immersion of brand story, Icebreaker does it as well, icebreaker.com if you want to check that out. It's all about the brand story. Patagonia does it as well. Patagonia is all about the brand story. So the e-commerce sites that lead with brand story, not only are they capturing that first best practice, the clarifying your compelling value, they are also able to go deeper into that customer's journey and also the way they're presenting information and the way that they're in other words they're gaining more room to maneuver in terms of the creative, in terms of how they present stuff, in terms instead of this being frivolous information, it actually becomes part of the experience. Instead of this being a distraction here, saving the bears or saving the conservation mission that Patagonia has, it becomes part of the experience. And this is what we call that marriage of content with e-commerce that we see as a future trend. And then I'll show you some examples as well as how that actually directly impacts the conversion optimization and specifically shopping cart abandonment. So responsive web design, enough said. This is what a non-responsive site looks like. This is why users are abandoning, because this is too much for users. So the 7th best practice is optimizing for mobile conversion, and here's 2 examples about adapting to the medium, to mobile. In the first example, the navigation is kind of in a swipe mode, so this site is teaching you that you can get more by swiping. So it's almost sensing. I call this context sensing. And I think this is huge with Internet of Things. If any of you are Internet of Things researchers, for example, that we'll see much more of this in devices and in our interactions with mixed reality, with augmented reality or virtual reality, for example. What we're trying to do is catered for. So in the Hyatt example, this is a beautiful example of, you're trying to book a room, and so they know you're on mobile. They're pushing. There's actually they're trying to get you to use the app. You've seen that at the top there. Then you close that, for example, and you put your dates in. They're telling you that 8 people have booked this. So this is a nice example of, in terms of that conversion funnel, they're trying to get you to convert. So they're using, this is called social proof. So this is actually a social user experience technique here as well, and they're kind of doubling up on trying to get you to convert, trying to push you through, trying to. There's another one of these little pop-up type of things, one of these strips that comes up that tells you that the room has has just, there's only one room left, for example. And somebody said to me, like, this is annoying, I can't see this. And for me, because I know this hotel and I book it regularly, for example, they really did motivate me. I was like, I went through that conversion process faster than you could say sold out. It really was a compelling motivator for me. And I already have the trust with the brand, et cetera, et cetera. So this is our eighth one here, which is out of stock messages. Some of you are wondering, what is that? Why is that a must? Well, there's a study that just came out this summer that shows that 75% of Americans in e-commerce have encountered that unavailable message. This is on eBay here, and this is the typical, item is out of stock. That's it, done. What we're looking for as a must is the proactive handling of that. And what we mean by that is what we're seeing over here on this very popular e-commerce site in India called Flipkart, and they say, oh, this one is basically out of stock, this one that you looked at, this dress, here's ones that other customers, and they push that to the top of the page. So instead of you going to the page and looking at an unavailable product, they offer you something similar so that they keep the flow going. And so that's what I mean by proactive. The other one, of course, that you've probably seen is, notify me when this is available again. So that's another way to do it. Both would be better, but the ninth one here is make category pages interactive. So Next, which is a popular clothing store in the UK, they had category pages on their site where they had all this imagery, all this kind of brand stuff, if you will, and then you could interact with the product, like I was mentioning earlier. They've done the same thing with their a recent redesign, where as you hover over the top menus, that's what this image is showing, you can move through these collections, and the image moves on the right a little bit, so you can kind of go through and get a quick visual, and it does the same thing for each category. That type of instant interactivity with imagery or with product is really key, especially on category pages. Instead of navigation like clicking down, when users are presented with something visual, this is what I've realized, and this is a subtle point that a lot of people don't understand. That usually you have the fight between the visual people in a company, the artists, the brand people, and then you have the conversion people who are just trying to get the user through the funnel as quickly as possible. And I actually see a marriage between the two. I actually see a middle ground where you can have high conversion and have high brand, where you can have a visual experience that's compelling, and that is the key to that emotional engagement, because how you compel someone, they look at an image and then what, you don't let them interact with it, really? So you give someone a beautiful, saw a woman standing in a desert or something, and she's wearing a nice piece, flowing dress, but you can't look at that dress further, why not? Or the example goes on and on. And if you go to a category page and there's 5 hats at the top as a visual, and then there's the products underneath, why can't you interact with those 5 hats at the top? Why not? Usually the reason is because the e-commerce engine you're using doesn't think that way, and that's probably one of your biggest limitations I've found with implementing these best practices, is hacking or getting around the limitations of canned e-commerce platforms. Even the largest sites use somewhat canned e-commerce platforms. But this is important. This is why it's important to have an independent UX view representing your e-commerce rollout or your e-commerce optimization. Let's go to number 10 then, which is using images, using visuals. This may seem really basic, and it is, but there are many sites. We just did a review of 20 global e-commerce sites and found that this is actually part of our localization seminar, which has a large e-commerce component to it, and global web design. And what we found is really interesting, that the new giants in Brazil and India, for example, and also in China, the very large e-commerce players in those countries really understand their audiences culturally and from a visual imagery brand perspective. This is a Portuguese e-commerce site called Fast Shop, and you'll see the use of kind of the infographics down here, and it continues. They're actually selling a phone. This is kind of like a page for electronics that they're selling, personal electronics, and you'll see here that they've tied, in this case, this is a localization bonus, they've tied the culture of surfing and football, soccer, very big in Brazil culturally. So this is when we say it's really strategic use of images, not just use of images and visuals. And further to strategic, what was discussed in the last best practice, which is making those interactive. This image is not interactive, but if the phone was a little larger and it said, this is the whatever Samsung XYZ, then it'd be nice to have a button to learn more and click on it, as opposed to just a marquee image that's static and there's no call to action. Even adding a button here would be just a basic usability best practice in terms of interactivity. These are basic things that many of the large e-commerce sites are totally missing today. So the 11th must is to promote reviews and customer testimonials. This is a given, but so here we have a category page and we have the review. The e-commerce analyst group in Scandinavia, one of the Scandinavian countries, I think they're in Denmark, Baymard, they're called. They did a study recently where they found that adding the data to the review on the product page actually increases the engagement. So how many people is that star rating there? Now when you go down to the product details page in this example, it gives it, and it gives it nicely with infographics, and a lot of the ratings and reviews engines and modules that you'll use actually come built sort of. This is an actual module, and then when you go to the actual review over here on the right, it's got nice testimonial type of metadata, like the location, the type of user, the gender, where they're based, and so forth and so on. And this is great. This is all best practice, and really important when selling product. So the branding the user voice here on number 12, and what that means is taking those testimonials and extending them from a branding perspective. When I say branding, what I'm really referring to is owning the customer voice, right? That's what I mean by branding it. In other words, it becomes part of the overall message that the value proposition of this particular brand, in this case it's Tom Shoes, how they're engaging their customers. This is not just about converting them down the product pages, it's about supporting the entire brand experience. And that means in this case there's a social campaign, so they have an hashtag I am Tom, and they're asking, these are actual customers that sent in, and so it's and they're asking you to socially engage up here as well. So it's part of their social engagement, but it ties in seamlessly to the messaging that they offer. It ties into their brand story, which was one of our guidelines. It ties into the whole impetus to purchase, the very first must that we saw, the compelling value proposition. It's a really good example using a lot of these best practices that we're identifying here for you in the seminar. The 13th one here is making strong category pages and using user-centric labeling. So let's talk about this for a minute. This is from Patagonia and Catagonia. The categories there. Patagonia is using a large imagery. There's a video, so built right into that page, and they've got tabs up here at the top, and so going with a very clean, very simple labeling system here. Capilene is their unique fabric, okay, and then merino wool, of course, is these types of merino wool that you can investigate, and then base layers for the performance sports folks that know Patagonia. This is their latest design. Their previous design is instructive. This is what it looked like before. So look at the categories on the left here. Again, fairly, simple women's base layer. Base layers that's the type of garment that you would know if you were a performance outdoor sportswear enthusiast. You might not know how to layer, so there's an educational opportunity. But in Patagonia's case, they have this branded Capilene stuff that if you go into their stores. So here's where it gets tricky, because they're introducing Capilene. So how did they get around that? So actually, this was, when they had this up as well, was also what we considered best practice, and we had consumers telling us that. It was actually Patagonia consumers who took us to this site and showed us this. So remember, I told you that these best practices are kind of vetted and validated by real-world customer research and studies that we've done for clients over the last few years. And in this case, there's this interactive tutorial. See how this plus and minus, you can zoom in here, you can learn more. Notice there's a video too. So they've even branded that in the testimonial sense that I talked about. A brand ambassador, literally someone that has the title ambassador, can be a helpful thing, and that's what we're seeing here. So again, education, strong user-centric kind of crossover from their brand voice to explaining what it is. So easy compare, straightforward with that one. That's been an e-commerce must for many years, and it's because you're supporting purchase decision. Good example here from Eddie Bauer. The 15th one is fun and interactive product wizard. So this is your guided experience, and this one on the left is actually a product called Smart Assistant. You can create these on the fly for your e-commerce site, and this is an example of one that they created for a German e-commerce site. The one on the right here is a Burton snowboard finder from Burton's website, the snowboard folks again, and you can see this kind of fun, playful engagement. Again, we had users showing us this and telling us that they like this, and on various e-commerce sites have various product selectors. So these are important, that they're really fun, and this is an actual quote. I really like this kind of thing. It's fun and informative. That's what the customers told us. So fluid checkouts are really important. By fluid, I mean fluid as in conversion optimized. This Warby Parker, the eyeglassware folks, a lot of good examples on their website, a lot of nice clean visual design. You can see it's focused here. Note that the navigation is hidden. And I put a note for accordion. It doesn't have to be accordion. You can have there are lots of options for e-commerce, but the accordion checkout is helpful because it's not doing a lot of reload next page, so it's taking away some of that tired movement through the cart process. So 17 is shipping up front, shipping status throughout. You'll see on this Brazilian e-commerce site, ShopTime, they actually have the ship to the shipping time estimator at the point of purchase decision here. So you're going to buy this flat screen TV and you can see how long it's going to take. This is a really great way to do that, and when we say throughout, we mean once you buy it, you should be getting emails telling you. There's so many websites, e-commerce sites, not doing that. It's worrying, you know. I had a laptop sent to me, IBM laptop I bought. This is a few years ago, and I bought it on the Friday, and I received it on the Monday morning. And I didn't get an email in between that whole, it was the weekend basically. I bought it on a Friday afternoon and they shipped it from China on Sunday overnight, and I received it on Monday like at noon. And I thought that was amazing, but I didn't receive any email to tell me that. And I thought, it's a good reminder of that lost opportunity to manage customer expectation. So finally, it's navigation that's accurate and sensible. And this is an interesting example from the Indian e-commerce site Shopalike, where for these saris they have the filter on the left here is providing very specific filters for the types of saris and dresswear there that will make sense to the user in India, Indian woman. And the American example here on the left, notice the clean left navigation, sensible, the bolding here, so you can very easily get to that, very easily navigate. This is a must in e-commerce, that navigation is precise and is sensible. So some trends that we think you should test here. Let's get into some trends, and then we'll wrap it up with conversion optimization and some shopping cart abandonment stuff. So here's some stuff that here's just a list for you to consider. The first is shipping info and offers. So we saw that example from the Brazilian site, and this is really important. You know, that shipping information is conveyed accurately and precisely. There's a big e-commerce site that has recently stepped up from a 5-day shipping to a 2-day shipping, and we've noticed on this site that they don't tell you that. So you get the product in 2 days, but they don't make any big deal out of it. And they're obviously trying to compete with Amazon's Prime, but offering that information can really help speed up conversions. And at the top, by the way, we say A/B testing and multivariate testing. So A/B and multivariate are definitely a must for your conversion optimization. Coupon and newsletter sign-up redemption, so offering a coupon, offering sign-up, and then some sort of reduction or some sort of, so like a pop-up, testing that to see how it performs. Recouponing after purchase, so you have sites like Sierra Trading Post, for example. Some of these sites, a lot of sites actually do this, where they'll send you a coupon afterwards, and you have to test how much pressure you're putting on that post engagement. Some of these sites blow you out and you just unsubscribe and never go back because they're so pushy. So it's important to test those. Mobile and adaptive design, this context sensing that I talked about, so knowing that, think about that one. If you didn't follow that one and you're thinking, what was that? I've never heard of that. There actually is a book that you can check out called Adaptive Web Design, which we extend this a little further than that author does. It's Gustafson, and we actually feel that there's a lot of opportunity to go beyond. This is a cousin to responsive design, is adaptive design. And think about it like this. This is very simply as location-based advertising. So you walk past a Starbucks and on your phone a coupon pops up, and says, this is going on. Now Apple is spending a lot of effort and time, and it looks like it's going to be a thing with geofencing, and sort of they're providing mapping inside of buildings and stores and things like that. So this is probably, now we didn't include it in the future trends because we don't want to hype things up and act like futurists predicting things far into the future. I don't really find that too helpful. There's enough of that on the internet. But this is likely to be a real thing, the geo mapping, and this is a great opportunity to use that context sensing you can then determine where a customer is in their purchase decision process. That's the ultimate. If you can map their purchase decision journey and then determine where they are in that journey from a mobile perspective, and then help them convert. And an example of that as well, if you're again trying to get a tangible example, is that it's just as simple as if the user's outside and it's very bright and sunny, or the opposite, if they're outside and it's nighttime and you can tell that it's nighttime and it's dark, that your buttons are easier to see. The contrast could be changed as well. Using the camera, for example. Obviously there are privacy issues, but you're already asking them for access to their contacts if you're using an app, or you're asking them for access to these things if you're using an app anyway. So in an app context, there may be more opportunity there, but it's definitely worth checking. So video reviews, testimonials, animations, adding some sizzle to a site, or testimonials and reviews like we've seen already. We talked about mixing branding with commerce and content with commerce, especially like on Learn pages. And I just want to show you some examples here of this site, posters.com, is reflecting some of those things here. So to buy this poster, you choose a wall color. So they're giving you a what-ifing decision-making tool. And there's even more. You can choose the area, right? The context of, oh, I want to put this in my children's room or a bathroom. What would it look like? So going to a lot of trouble just to give you this tool to help you visualize, just like in that journey mapping example where we were trying to help people visualize their options for taking classes at the sports facility. And then if you notice, once you've done that, buy it framed or skip the framing, right? So they've got a dynamic panel on the right there. Another thing to notice here is save your shopping cart. So this is really smart. If you connect this to what we said at the beginning of the webinar, which was that people are starting their searches on mobile, and how can you help users as they go across devices? Maybe they're on a tablet, maybe they're on a desktop, and they're going back and forth, back and forth. So conversion optimization, it's really important to nip cart abandonment in the bud, in the sense that it's a very serious issue. We know that on mobile, it's the lack of responsive web design, not optimized for the mobile display, that is a sore pain point. But there are other things, such as login. One of the trends right now with this whole login password security usability issue, and it definitely is one, that one of my personal pet peeves, having to log into my iPhone and log into this and log into that over and over and over, is that moving to a lot of sites and apps are moving towards pins, are moving towards continuous login. Like Facebook, you just hit the continue button. PayPal, you put in, you can use your thumb recognition on the iPhone 6. The same for Amazon. So they're trying to remove that barrier to entry. 24% want to save their products for consideration later. That's huge. We're talking an industry with 2 to 5% conversion rates in e-commerce is normal, but there are things you can do to hack that and quadruple that easily to 10, 15, 20%. We had an e-commerce site that we worked on, and the e-commerce site had an 88% increase in conversions. As Marketing Sherpa actually wrote a case study about the site. Well, one of the things that we tested, so what we did is we asked users if they were willing to buy stuff on this website, because our client had a huge e-commerce selection, and they had these 6 other sites. And we asked users, would you buy stuff? And we were using kind of like an interactive panel and sending these surveys, and even sending sample layouts and doing like A/B kind of perception testing, to see which layout, just what's your quick reaction, navigation on the left side, navigation on the right side, navigation at the top. We were using different layouts and looping the options and trying to get their quick hit of which one felt easier to use. because perceived ease of use is as important as actual ease of use as well. So this was in the early research stages, in the user research stages, and 99% of customers told us they absolutely did not want any e-commerce on this site, which was a problem for our client, just a small problem in the sense that our client had this product that they were trying to sell. So, and the reason was because this site was a community type site. Users perceived the content as just a sharing of information. So what we did is we went back and we took information that was valuable to them. This is the content plus commerce thing. And we merged the, we said, we gave them the content they wanted, and then we said, if we gave you this content, would you be open to suggested products relevant to that content? And something like 89% of customers, say 90% of customers said, yes, we would. So almost 100% said, do not sell to us. And then we said, well, if we met your needs and gave you this content you wanted, and then recommended relevant products that were relevant to the content in that article, would that be okay? And almost the majority told us there, a strong majority said, yes, that would be fine. And we were like, whew, that's a good thing, because we need, so now we knew the precise pressure point, if you will. We knew that precise, purchase decision mapping that would help get them into buying. And we had a 200% increase in revenue on that site. It went from just making no money to over $1 million in 6 months, and it was just one of the small properties on our clients' their suite of sites. So this is to say that shopping cart abandonment should be a bread and butter focus for you. Notice these guys, even back on that allposters.com example, that they're putting the satisfaction guarantee up there. Now it's dynamic. You can check out with PayPal. Notice the Norton Secure thing, and there's even a bill me later option, and a save to cart if you want to do that. So they're offering that, shopping cart abandonment. They're offering you options there, or an option to to help propel you through, really, is what the satisfaction guarantee is. You look at the reasons here that Baymard, I've mentioned them earlier, that they found in one of their surveys was the majority, the shipping. So that's why we're recommending you test those shipping variations that we recommended earlier. Forced account creation, right? Imagine on a mobile phone, if you're fiddling around going to your email, authenticating, coming back, just a complete nightmare, really. I mean, that's what doing that on a phone is. And shopping for most people is and should be a pleasant experience. So when we introduce e-commerce usability blockers to our conversions, we're not doing a service to that pleasure that people are trying to feel when they're shopping. We're throwing, it's like walking into a store and throwing ice on someone, or making the floor slippery where they're almost about to fall or something. Complicated checkout processes, no need for that. There's absolutely no need for that. We have now 18 or 20 years of e-commerce usability. There have been so many studies, empirical studies, academic studies, industry studies. There's so much information and best practices available that at least 2 or 3 of these should not exist as issues, but yet they still do as of June of 2013, and they'll continue to as well. So here's the secret in the last few minutes here to avoiding cart abandonment, and it's really, this is really key to optimization, is mapping those precise elements of the purchase decision, supporting that purchase decision, and pre-funnel, so pre-conversion, of course, during decision making, that's where most people focus on. When it comes to conversion optimization, most people just focus on during, which is important, but pre is, I want my customer to be so motivated that when it comes to during, they propel right through like a rocket. And then, of course, after is important for retention and for what we call reflection, which is an emotion design issue when someone reflects on a site. A couple of final examples here as we wrap. This is on Patagonia's site, and I've put the browser on there just so you can see that this is the full screen view. This is a full screen view, and I searched here as well so you can see how I got to this page. This is a category page, and as you scroll down, so there's a little scroll bar showing over here on the right, so I scrolled this far and I've got this thing, and then it goes up. It's kind of a parallax scrolling effect. This is actually extremely important, this image right here. Some of you think, wow, that's a waste of space, and why would you do that? We found with our e-commerce study with a retail e-commerce site that one of Lululemon did the same thing. They've updated their site now, but they use this as wallpaper, the fabric. People told us that in shopping online for these expensive performance garments like Patagonia and Lululemon, for example, which is like a popular yoga clothing brand, is that they wanted to see the fabric and the stitch, that was really important. There was another case study from REI, the popular outdoor site, and they took a hiking boot at REI on their website, and they put they showed the tread of the boot, and they had much higher conversions, like off the scale from when they did that. And it's because when it came to the purchase decision process, the user was able to say, oh, that looks like a good tread, right? So if you scroll down this page, I'm continuing scrolling just to show you, again, more goodness. This is the entire huge, almost like infographic, promoting the features. Now, this piece is not interactive. That would be one of our musts, is to make this, let me go buy this piece. Like, you don't know what it's called. Does this exist in every product? There's a few things they're missing, but at least to show you that this is number one in the e-commerce must that we saw, which is to clarify your unique, your compelling difference in terms of what you're offering. And this stuff is huge in this particular subcategory of performance outdoor clothing, for example. The features and the unique elements are what users tell us is the reason why they'll pay the premium amount on these products. And finally, just to throw this bath in the bomb, this bomb in the bath, this is the Bath Bomb website. Lulu and Lush, not Lulu. I was thinking Lululemon Athletica. This is Lush's website, the Bath Bomb people. So just to throw this bomb in the bath, that maybe, as you bring it all together in terms of content, in terms of, they're mixing. This is a product detail page. It's actually one of their category and their kind of, listing pages. And they mix in, an article, like they have it labeled here so you can see an article, a product, a gift guide, 2 products, an article, and a video. And the video is moving, by the way, so they're adding the animation. Was one of the things that I suggested you experiment with as well, to bring some of your pages to life. So just an idea, maybe it's one of my favorite examples from Lush. One of the kind of things directions that you might go in and take some of the things that we've shared with you today in terms of the 18 musts of e-commerce usability. I hope that it's inspired you. I hope that it has kind of helped correct some of your assumptions and maybe reinforce some of the things you already know, and maybe giving you some food for thought for some of your future conversion optimization or e-commerce usability efforts just in time for the holiday season. I think we're actually out of time for now, so thank you so much for joining me today. I will stick around for a few minutes and answer questions and open up the chat for you. Thank you so much, everyone, and hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you.